Hi, everyone. So when people asked me where I was going for my fellowship, and I said Kenya and Norway, I got a lot of very confused responses. So hopefully this will clear up a lot of that confusion. Grid Arendal, which is an organization based in Norway, is a center that works with the UN Environment Program and various other partners. They take environmental data and combine it with their own fieldwork and communicate it in a very easy to understand way. So this is Rob Barnes. He's the sort of the main video guy at Grid Arendal. And he's kind of like the reason that I wanted to work for them, because it's a pretty large organization, and he is the only person who just does video and photos and that kind of visual communication full time. So as a result, he's traveled all over the world and he's captured all of this really amazing content, but a lot of it doesn't see the light of day because it's just him with so many projects that he just doesn't have the time to work on everything and get it out there. So my role there was sort of to help them increase their video capacity. I also just want to briefly touch on the link between human rights and environmental issues. You know, a lot of issues, including the ones that I worked on around wastewater management, are really combined. You know, it's an environmental problem, but it's also has a really high human impact. And you know, as climate change sort of continues, there's going to be even more issues that are a combination of both. So I'm going to play just like 1 minute of one of the videos that I created while I was working for Grid Arendal, just to give you an idea of where I was working.
Kibera is a Swahili word which means forest. You see now it's covered with the iron sheet covered houses. But this was fully a forest, that's why it's called Kibera. Originally, when it was a forest, the first people to inhabit here were people from Sudan. These people were brought back from England to Kenya, and then from Kenya they had to go back to Sudan. But the Sudanese government rejected them, that they are no longer citizens. So they were the first people to be allocated to stay in Kibera. That is how it started now to become a settlement for people without homes. It kept on growing like that, increasing. Eventually, right now, there are more than 1 million people who live in Quebec.
So that was just like a little taste of what I was working on. Oh, no, I'm not playing it again. Okay. So the project that I was working on was kind of tackling wastewater management issues in Kibera. And originally the plan was I was going to sort of find a family or just a few individuals and sort of follow their water usage throughout a day and just see show how it's different from people here, because you know, when you live in a place that doesn't have a garbage pickup, it doesn't have like not all of the toilets are connected to sewers, and all of that. It's a very, very different relationship to water. But as we were doing our work, a news story sort of emerged. So Rob had been to Kenya the year prior, and so this is a shot that he took when he was in Kenya the year before, and as we were returning to some of the places that he had been, we saw dramatic changes, and the reason for this is because right after he left, the Kenyan government implemented a nationwide ban on single-use plastic bags. And because of this, it was having dramatic impacts on the people who lived in Kibera. So this is exactly the same spot 1 year later. And as you can see, there's significantly less plastic. The water was still dirty, but the fact that the rivers were no longer as clogged with plastic bags meant that the population wasn't coming into contact with this dirty water, which is a huge problem because sometimes it can carry waterborne diseases. And so it was no longer flooding like it used to during the rainy season, or it would still sometimes flood, but not as much. So this is sort of an example of a legislative action that has had a really dramatic impact. So next I'm going to talk about the second project that I worked on in Kenya with Grid Arundel. It was called the Mikoko Pamoja Project, which means mangroves together in Swahili, I think. Basically, to talk about this, I need to talk a little bit about carbon credits, which I'm sure you all have kind of a basic understanding of that. But Mikoko Pamoja was using this new form of carbon credits, which is called blue carbon. So normally, a company can buy carbon credits from an organization that will plant terrestrial trees. And the difference with Mikoko Pamoja was that they were preserving the mangroves near their village. And in exchange, they were selling carbon credits. Now, carbon credits aren't without controversy, but I won't get into that this time. So the reason that mangroves are particularly interesting is because people are starting to recognize that they're a unique ecosystem. Not only do they sequester carbon, but they also stop erosion, they protect coastlines and communities from tropical storms, and they provide a nursery for juvenile fish, which improves fish stocks and that the communities rely on. So the Mikoko Pamoja project was proposed to the community, and then after they would sell their targeted number of carbon credits, they would then use the money from the sale. It would go towards salaries, administration, and supplies, but then some of it would also go back into the community. And so the first project that they funded with the sale was a community well. So they provide the community with clean water. This also created this opportunity for young scientists from all over Kenya to come to this community and start researching different topics. Everything from how much carbon does seagrass sequester to what's a more efficient design of cook stoves, because the communities could no longer harvest mangroves and then burn the wood for their cook stoves, so they needed a more efficient way. So we had these young scientists from all over the country who were researching these different topics. So in these two projects that I worked on, I'm just going to kind of go over sort of two takeaways that I had. So first of all, I think it's really important to work with local crew. So I was really lucky to have a lot of people that were helping me, and they provided a really unique perspective, and it was really great. Also, thank you, Carlos, for putting me in touch with Nicole. She was great. And then the other takeaway is, you may be going to a place with a certain mission. For me, it was to make these videos to communicate different issues. But I think it's also really important to listen to the communities that you're working in and see what is it that that would help them that you can provide. And as I was working in Gazi Bay, where the Mikoko Pamoja project was happening, a lot of people said that they wanted to learn how to better communicate their research, the young scientists, on social media. So I just kind of impromptu organized a workshop for them on how to take better photos and how to better promote themselves on social media. So that was really great. So thank you.
Okay, so while we're waiting for the tech to get back up, unfortunately this of course is our segment on media, which means that we're trying to show you pieces of documentary films, or I would say let's do it without the visuals. But while we're doing that, why don't we see if there's any questions for Olivia about the work that she was doing, and we'll kind of get the questions for her covered now, and then we will return to the full group. So any questions for Olivia? Yes?
So when you were working with these families there in Kenya, how did they receive you as someone from the outside coming to record their practices, and how were you able to sort of make that kind of human connection with them to show that you're not sort of someone just observing their life, but that you're trying to really be part of it?
And if you guys can kind of repeat or summarize the questions when you answer, just so that people who didn't hear.
Yeah, so that was a question about how I was received as sort of an outsider. So that was like kind of why it was so essential that I had local support. You know, I was really lucky to get in touch with Nicole Walters, who she was a local journalism student, and so she kind of came on as an associate producer, and she was really key in talking to the people. And you know, in a lot of cases, it was Nicole and I would get in touch with we got in touch with this one other NGO that was working in Kibera, and then they put us in touch with some families that were sort of interested in that were willing to talk about their lives. So that was really helpful. And then when I was in Gazi Bay, it was a completely different environment. Like in that case, you know, it was a lot of like young, very educated people from all over Kenya. Most of them were working on master's or PhD projects, and so they were like just more than welcoming, and they were like, please, by all means, film my research. We want this out in the world. So so it was not an issue at all in that part of the project.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Sorry, maybe I missed it. What were the videos used for?
Well, so they're still.
Do you mind repeating the question?
Oh yes. So what were the videos used for? So the first one is actually being color corrected right now. So my part of the work is done, but it's going to be put online on Grid Arundel's website, and just sort of to complement some of the reports and other pieces that they've produced on the topic. The second video, the one about Mikoko Pamoja, is actually it's hopefully going to go in a film festival at a conference. So, and that one is really interesting because there's a lot of communities that are actually trying to replicate the same way of empowering the community and selling carbon credits by preserving their mangroves. So, so I'm really excited about that one because hopefully it will help other communities be inspired to do a similar thing or learn from some of the challenges that that project faced.
So yeah, I'm Raed. I'm a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker, and an aspiring scholar. I'm doing a PhD in film and digital media at UC Santa Cruz. I grew up in the Middle East. I grew up in a city called Tripoli. It's the second largest city in Lebanon. And it's a Mediterranean city known for its orange trees traditionally. And I remember as a child smelling orange blossoms in the spring. The city today cannot be more removed from nature because of pollution and urban sprawl. Yeah, the idea of nature in the city is really far away. And basically this brings me to a more philosophical question. What is nature, and what do we consider as natural in our modern day everyday lives? So I carried this question with me as I went back to Tripoli this summer as a Human Rights Center fellow, and I interviewed people on the streets and coffee shops and public gardens about how they conceive nature and what is natural. And I'm going to show you a short video just to give you a sense of what I shot this summer. لما حدا يقول لكم طبيعة شو بتتخيلي؟ شو برأيك الطبيعة؟ لما بتفكر بالطبيعة بشو بتفكر؟ شو اللي بيعطيك هيدي القوة انه تكون انت على طبيعتك؟ او هل بتعتبر انه انت هلا اليوم على طبيعتك؟
لولا الطبيعة لا في تنفس ولا في راحة ولا في حب ولا في مستقبل ولا في شيء، الطبيعة هي كل شيء للإنسان.
الطبيعة بتكون حضارة ونظافة وشكل مرتب، ليش تدير بال على هالاشياء هيدي؟
أنا على طبيعتي إنسان عادي مثل هالبشر، يعني ما بيفرق عنه الشيء.
في شيء حب طبيعي وحب غير طبيعي؟
إذا حب حقيقي أكيد حب طبيعي 100%، بس إذا منه حقيقي أكيد منه طبيعي بالمرة.
شو هو الحب الطبيعي والحب الغير؟
الحب الطبيعي وقت اللي انت بتلفي على بنت الناس بتحبها من قلبك وبتحتفظ عليها وبتيجي انت بتعطيها حنيتك كلها سوا.
على السوق بيصير في مشاكل وعيات وتسبسب وكثير قصص هون بتعرضوا للتراب، بس ما بس انا يعني غير كثير.
شو بتحس؟
ما بحس، بطنش وبمشي.
المجتمعات عم تتغير وعم يحكوا انه عن حب بين رجل ورجل وبين مرأة ومرأة، انتم شو رايكم بهذا الموضوع؟ So probably you understood that my film was not exactly about the environment, but I was trying to understand how people think about when they think about love and when they think about sexuality in the human realm. How do they evoke nature? The reason is because in Lebanon, same-sex relations are boxed as an unnatural phenomenon, institutionally and legally. We have an article of the Lebanese Code, Article 534, that states that any sexual intercourse contrary to the order of nature is punishable by up to 1 year in prison. And we got this law in the 1920s from the French. So for the past 100 years, this law has been used to prosecute homosexuals in the country and to subject mainly homosexual men to physical and verbal abuse in detention centers and in prisons. Now, fortunately, in the past 6 years, several courts have argued against the applicability of this law because how can a law or how can a court define what nature is? And some progressive judges have stated that laws have to follow social progress and respect personal freedoms and personal rights. Now, unfortunately, on the dark side, I don't see the Lebanese parliament striking down this law anytime soon because of the political climate in the country and because of pressure from religious groups. Also, the society remains mostly homophobic. And so a lot of civil rights groups and LGBT rights groups are trying to work to advocate against this law and to raise awareness for LGBT rights in the country. And I worked with one of these organizations this summer, an organization called Halam, or it's the Arabic word for dream. And this is the first LGBT rights organization. My project was to make a documentary that will challenge people's fixed notions about what gender roles are, what marriage is, what love is, what sexuality is. And I chose Tripoli for many reasons. As I started by saying Tripoli is my hometown, and as a queer person, I grew up there being bullied because I did not fit in the strict gender norms that were expected of a boy, and so I felt I had a personal stake at going back there and filming there. It's also considered to be one of the most religious and most conservative cities in the country. And I really saw my project as sort of starting a conversation and breaking a taboo. A lot of the answers I got were considered homosexuality to be unnatural, which was disheartening for religious reasons or pseudo-scientific reasons. But there were also some open, some enlightening answers, and I also interviewed several LGBT people, queer people who had the courage to be who they are in that conservative society. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. My project is actually making a documentary that investigates the experience and emotional traumas of a group of volunteers who provide first aid service during the 2014 Hong Kong Umbrella Movement. For the following, I will just show you a 5-minute clip of why they think it is important to talk about it, even it passed like 4 years already. But before that, I feel like I should give you a brief background of what Umbrella Movement is. It actually happened in 2014 September. It is a pro-democratic movement that lasts for 79 days. The reason why Hong Kong people occupy 3 important commercial districts is that because, I mean, tens of thousands of posters occupy those important areas because it's that in that summer, like the exact time will be August 31st, the Chinese government actually imposed a framework saying that the chief executive, that means the leader of Hong Kong, later on, they could actually give us the chance to vote for our chief executive, but they have to pre-screen all the candidates. That means Hong Kong people are not happy with that because our right to free roam is actually denied at all. And then that's why people just go to occupy the areas. And then the group, why I'm focusing on this group of people is because that not just of their physical, but also the mental injuries during that time when the police force tried to expel all the protesters is actually the very significant way to show that our human rights is actually being denied. And also because once the Hong Kong government and also the Beijing government denounced that the occupation as illegal, what we have been always enjoyed, the rights of protest, the right to protest have been taken away. And then, so now why this project is important, not just for me to make it and also for this group of people, is because when the film is finished, it should be the 5th anniversary of the movement. It's time to make people remember what is happening because now Hong Kong government tried every way to just erase this history, and then we just feel like it is important to talk about it and also let other people know, because now there's already like 33 documentaries about the Umbrella Movement, but most of them are just focusing on the political stuff, but this is not what I'm focusing on because this group of people deserve the chance to share the experience.
一個地方可以有咁多人同時間喺同一個時間走出嚟嘅時候咧，通常喺一個 tertiary 嘅社會入面咧，通常都係同 freedom 有關嘅。成個運動可能好多度都係講緊我哋要和平咁樣接觸，即係我哋係 civilized people， 即係我哋唔需要，即係我哋仍然去相信香港係唔需要去暴力去爭取民主，或者係我哋相信就係只要我哋去肯去話俾政府聽，我哋有幾堅持嘅時候，佢無論佢贊唔贊成都好，佢會聽我哋嘅訴求。即係我哋呢樣嘢，我哋仍然相信，所以我哋會覺得就係我哋一
政府去做到我哋想要嘅嘢，而係我哋只不過係你至少聽，你至少去重開呢個對話，即係至少我哋其實要求就係咁。但係去到後期開始係去炸，即係佢哋嘅催淚彈係向住開始去嘅，甚至係向住海觀眾生活交流站嘅，跟住係因為有一個催淚彈係向住海觀眾生活交流站而有嗰個人嘅手上，跟住我哋可以做到啲咩？
以前你講7·1遊行唔會去到咁極端㗎嘛，即係唔會聽到話你講呢啲啊返工，我唔講政治㗎喎咁樣，即係有人係咁嘅。咁但係你係咯，即係你而家係去到一個位係有啲人係驚咗，驚自己有事，我越唔講咁樣。佢而家咪就係有啲叫耍警白嘅效果做咗出嚟咯，而都係正正佢想收個效果。佢喺呢個 event 係咪叫 event？ 對於佢嚟講，佢可能係一個 event 嚟嘅啫。你做咗一樣嘢，你表達你嘅意見，我唔係俾你表達，我冇喎，咁樣我有俾你表達到喎。但係我而家我將你嘅自由喺佢哋嘅詮釋之中就係、你過咗火啦，你講完一堆説話，表達完之後咧，你有武力嘅成分，所以我而家要打壓你。咁但係一開頭嘅時候唔會一開頭就出現武力㗎嘛，嗰樣嘢。即係所謂嘅叫言論自由啦，就係、你寫一啲字啊，你表達一啲嘢啊，大家會可能而家會諗啊，我 WeChat 嗰啲係咪唔可以講呢啲嘢啊？我唔可以 post 呢啲嘢啊咁樣。咁呢個係一個大陸嘅 Apps 啊咁樣。咁大家會知道呢樣嘢係會唔會言論自由嘅喎？咁跟住之後咧，但可能你喺 Facebook 度會繼續喺度咁樣講喎。咁然之後或者你好簡單，就係、你同人哋傾完偈，你去見工，你盡量第一下你都唔同人講政治立場啦。呢、個就係一個好明顯嘅言論自由係被收窄咗啦。即係尤其是近年就會更加 sensitive 翻對於呢樣嘢。即係大學生可能仲會有人行出嚟，咁但係你見到慢慢逐漸去揾啲人去，係咪叫做秋後算賬？逐日去講翻嘅時候，我諗會再將言論自由呢樣嘢會再收窄，收窄唔係佢特登收窄你啊，係佢做一啲嘢去令到你自我收窄咗。呢、個係佢乜都唔使做咁就係你自己去收窄咗。
就算呢一個片咧喺社會上面，如果喺返香港社會上面瘋傳都好啦，唔會對我有咩影響。係啊，因為我已經斷咗自己去到加入建制嘅路㗎啦嘛。咁我只係一個鍾意自己講乜就講乜嘅一個香港嘅市民，係啦。咁23條未嚟之前，我都睇唔到對我有咩影響。係啊，咁啊23條出現咗之後，咁啊希望你好好咁報告呢條片。
Okay, because this is a project that for the people who refuse to give up their right to free speech. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions before I launch into a question? All right, I'll give you all a second to think while I ask the first question. For all of you, you all kind of touched on the aspect of using documentary filmmaking as your method of choice. Can you talk a little bit more about what opportunities that provides for human rights practice that maybe other mediums don't, but also what challenges and burdens it maybe puts on the populations that you have to think through when you're addressing these issues? Mavis, I don't know if you want to start, maybe.
Maybe I should talk about the challenges, because before I go back to Hong Kong in summer, the first thing in my mind to think about is the safety of my interviewee, because I have no idea how I could protect them from the unknown political consequences. And then when I went back and then I asked them whether they want to participate in the project, they say yes, because they feel like there's no opportunities for them to just voice out their opinions. And then I asked them whether they are willing to be filmed with a camera, and then I could just make a sound recording from their interviews, and then they would just tell me that they feel like there's no problem to be shown on screen. It's because even during the movement, the policemen already used the camera to make the record. They asked me if the authority could use the image, why couldn't they trust me and then let me use the interview by myself? And then I feel like this is the problem that, this is the challenge that I never think that I could solve so easily. But I feel like why I'm making use of documentaries to say about this human rights issue is that because it could keep a record, that the government could have no way to erase it. I mean, at least now. So, yeah.
I think I'm not a human rights activist. I'm a documentary filmmaker, so I think it was naturally this is how I would approach a topic like this. But I feel that that documentaries, especially the way I wanted to make my film, would be just talking to the people directly in their language. And maybe that's veering off from the question, but from the first day of filming, I was a little bit scared of maybe asking this taboo question about same-sex love. So I thought, well, I start with this idea of nature and the natural. And what was very striking to me is that people are so much used to answering questions about politics, and they're never asked a philosophical question about nature and the natural. And so just by entering the subject from that angle, I think people were on board and were really engaged in the conversation. I don't know how, so this is the first phase, which is the filming phase. I don't know how the reception is going to be. But at least throughout my filming, even though I asked very difficult questions to people who were conservative, but I feel that at the end, the way I approached the question, everybody was willing to engage and answer. And yeah, and I thought, well, that's a good thing.
Olivia? So in terms of working with more vulnerable communities, I would say it was really important to make sure that you got informed consent. So, it's one thing to ask someone, are you okay to be filmed? But then they may not know what exactly that could mean for them. And so in my case, I had approached a few people who they were doing kind of an illegal car washing business, and after talking to them, I realized it's probably not a good idea for me to put these people on the internet doing this. So so there were cases where you as a filmmaker may have to sacrifice some really good content in order to protect your sources, and I mean there are other ways where you can obscure identities, and sometimes that's appropriate, and or sometimes you really need to see a person's face in order to really empathize with them. So yeah, that's one thing I would say.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
So something that I experienced in my work within the aid sector was often just a hesitancy to take pictures because I felt like I felt uncomfortable taking pictures of that specific vulnerable time in life, and many times I heard from refugees who I knew that it was really difficult for them to have their entire identity become just of a refugee instead of everything else that they are. And so while I definitely respect and believe that there's such a role for photographers and documentary filmmakers, I wondered if you guys come across that sort of worry of simplifying a person's identity or perpetuating certain kind of role stereotypes.
And if you could just repeat the question as you're answering it so we know what you're responding to.
Okay, I'll jump in. So the question was if when we interview someone who's in a vulnerable position, what are the ethical, basically, considerations? I think in this film it was more about just sounding population at large about, and even if sometimes I did approach people who looked queer, I wasn't asking them directly about their queerness. I made sure to that people understood what the interviews were about. But from previous experiences, I did interview Syrian refugees who were HIV positive. And I spend a lot of time with them, specifically for this couple who are living in Lebanon and waiting to be sent to France, basically. I try to spend a lot of time with them, and I also try to show them in their everyday life, and I think it's always very difficult, but I think that humanizes people when you see them cooking or chatting or watching television or playing video games, and so I try to make the subject look as natural as anybody else, I guess. I don't think there are perfect answers, but at least that's my approach.
All right, we're about to go into our last 10-minute break, but before we do, we have coming up next a section on health and a section on education, so we hope you'll stick around for that. But please join me in thanking our film panel, our video panel.